Chapter 22 Old Kasuto. "Oh, I'm still dizzy," Zelda said, stumbling a bit. "I don't think I'll ever get used to traveling with one of those." "Zelda, be quiet," Miranda whispered harshly, then pulling on her arm. "Get down before someone sees us." Preparations for the mission to rescue King Facade from Boss Guma at Old Kasuto had not taken as long as Miranda had thought, especially since her cousin had already possessed an outfit that would serve as a pretty convincing disguise, especially now that most of her hair had been chopped off. The queen looked like one of those desert warriors from Ganondorf's original tribe, especially when she had the bandana and face wrap on, but Miranda was not so impressed after finding out that she had made the outfit to fulfill one of her husband's fantasies. "This looks like the place, all right," Miranda observed, now in her old guise of Blind the Master Thief. "I see a lot of creatures like the Paratamu described, but a lot of criminal types as well, probably mercenaries." The presence of mercenaries being hired was a blessing, since it would allow the two women to move around the village of Old Kasuto without drawing attention to themselves, and it was even better that they had arrived just as the sun was finishing setting. The village itself looked like it had been abandoned for a long time before being occupied by Guma, judging by the rotting boards on the houses, and how the village sign was hanging by a single nail. But how were they going to find the entrance to the underground fortress? Having taken a position behind a large bush a good distance away from where some of those Wosu creatures were lighting torches and campfires, Miranda was trying her best to get the lay of the land, but since the entrance to the underground area wasn't likely to be outside, the two of them were going to have to search the buildings. They were armed, Zelda carrying her boomerang and a wooden bow that she had taken from the armory before they left, while the resurfaced Master Thief had broken out her old tools for this job. A hookshot weapon up her sleeve, a magical candle underneath her cloak, her old strengthening bracelet locked onto her arm, and the master key to all Hyrule being used to hold her hair up under the hood. It had been a few years since she had stepped into the old lifestyle that she had before meeting Aghanim, but becoming blind again felt like the most natural thing in the world to her, contrasting how nervous and uncomfortable her cousin looked. "And what have we here?" a male voice loudly announced as his shadow fell over them in the light of the rising moon. "A couple of—" Making a fist and throwing it sideways without even looking, Miranda stopped the mercenary's words by punching him in the groin with the help of her special bracelet. He dropped his sword while stumbling away from the bush, falling to his hands and knees in the center of the road in plain view of all, and the thief followed him. Instead of keeping with a stealthy approach like she and the queen had planned, Miranda punched him in the side of his head while demanding to know who taught him how to treat a lady, and then kicking him in the stomach so that he fell back down. "Give me your arm, you feeble little boy," the thief continued, making him scream when she twisted it around behind his back. "Now empty your pockets. Do it with your other hand or I swear I'll break this one." By the time a crowd of creatures and more mercenaries had gathered to watch the spectacle, some commenting on the newcomer's strength, while others laughed at their comrade who had taken all of his possessions out of his pockets and throwing it at her feet. A few seconds later, the mercenary swore that he had given her everything, screaming it several times to the laughter of the others, and then shrieking like a wounded animal when she broke his arm anyway with a loud snap. "Get out of here, you weakling!" the thief yelled, kicking him as he started to crawl away. "Run home to your mother, and then smack her in the mouth for raising someone stupid enough to attack Blind the Master Thief." With a loud huff, as if she were annoyed, Miranda collected up her stolen loot, which wasn't much, and then went back to where the queen was still hiding. Again loudly announcing that the friendly approach wasn't going to work, she and Zelda walked right out into the open like they belonged. At least Miranda did, while some of the mercenaries commented about the name Blind. Yes, my friends, I really am Blind the Master Thief," she said much more politely while doing a half-hearted curtsy. "I and my sister, the fearsome slave trader Sheik, have come here because we heard that someone was hiring for a really big job, and that this someone is kin to the sorcerer Ganondorf." Now there was more murmuring throughout the village, pretty much confirming her suspicions that the information she had tortured out of the Paratamu was accurate. But then the crowd grew silent. The silence lasted only for a moment, replaced by the sound of footsteps so heavy that the ground shook a little with each one, and then the creatures and mercenaries alike moved off to the side so that a clear path was formed when a really, really big and muscular figure walked out. "You must have some pretty reliable sources, Blind," Boss Guma said as he walked toward the two of them. "I am building an army for a job. The job of a lifetime, in fact. And yes, Ganondorf was my cousin. A cousin that I heard you helped kill."
"Your cousin was an idiot, and the king paid me a fortune,"
Miranda said, almost aggressively when stepping right up to the man who dwarfed her slender frame.
"But my sister and I don't like living in the past, Guma, so kiss my hand like a gentleman, and then we can talk business."
She held out her hand, and the big man just stood there for almost a minute before a smile slowly started to crack across his face. His spiked helmet tilted a little bit when he began to laugh shortly after, but then surprised everyone when he took Miranda's hand and kissed it gently, saying that it was a pleasure to meet such a reputable criminal of Hyrule. Zelda, meanwhile, had kept her distance but gasped when Guma grabbed her hand as well, pulling her up to him so that he could kiss hers as well, for longer than he had with Miranda.
"Ooh, you smell wonderful. Chic, is it?"
he said, now holding her hand with both of his.
"Short hair excites me, and I love a woman who keeps her silence."
"I'm, flattered, Guma,"
the queen replied, looking like she was trying not to be sick.
"But you're not really my type, see? I like men who are more pretty."
Again, bursting out with laughter, the big man swatted Zelda on the rear, giving her a half hug with one arm, and then patting her on the head. This distraction gave Miranda the time she needed to spin around and get a better look at the buildings, figuring that the most populated and heavily guarded one would be the best place to start looking for Facade. But how was she going to get to actually look around for him without raising suspicion?
"That's because you've never been with a real man, Sheik," Guma continued. "Stick close to me, beautiful, and try your hardest to win my favor, because soon I'll be the king of Hyrule."
"Doesn't Hyrule already have a king?"
Miranda said, stopping the cheer that started after his announcement.
"You know, pretty face, beautiful long hair, goes by the name of Facade."
"Oh, King Facade is so handsome," Zelda continued, finally getting the hint from all the winking her cousin was doing toward her.
"I hear he's the finest warrior in the kingdom as well. So how are you going to defeat him?"
The big man started to turn red in the face with anger at hearing how great these two women thought the King of Hyrule was, so of course, Guma just had to start bragging about how Facade was already taken care of. According to the big man, without his Lord Sheriff and robed wizard to protect him, Facade was easily defeated, and the creatures and mercenaries around him cheered when he added that the king was chained up in his personal dungeon right here in town.
"Wait a minute, Guma, wait a minute,"
Miranda said, putting her hands on her hips as if she didn't believe him.
"Are you telling me that you actually have the King of Hyrule locked up in some dungeon around here? That is something that I will have to see to believe, thank you."
"Fine then, Blind. I'll show you who the greatest warrior in Hyrule is,"
the big man boasted, his own hands on his hips, maybe to mock her.
"I'll have one of my guards take you down to see my prisoner, but it will cost you. Afterwards, you both join my army, and at each mealtime your sister sits on my lap. How does that sound, Sheik?"
"It sounds like you should show us the king," the queen said, suddenly bold while stepping forward. "Show me that you've really captured him like you said, and I'm yours."
"Way to go, Zelda," Miranda thought as the crowd reacted to her performance, and sure enough, with a snap of Guma's fingers, a guard came to escort them down to where Facade was being held. Of course, the thief couldn't help but wonder if this was a trap. If the big man saw right through their performance, being that Ganondorf had been incredibly smart, or was Guma really this big of an idiot? Was it possible that it really was going to be this easy to get Facade free? Or were the two of them walking right into a trap the moment they were shown into one of the most brightly lit nearby buildings? A building that had a trap door leading down to a deep stone staircase.